My parents love him, they'll never accept you, she said, dumping me for a guy her family chose. A few months later, she's miserable and begging for another chance. Sup Reddit. Never thought I'd be airing relationship drama here. But here we are, 2 years later, and my ex is still losing her mind trying to crawl back into my life. This story's got everything. Family manipulation, golden boy syndrome, restraining orders, and an ending that'll make you believe in karma again. Let's start from the beginning. I'm Martin, 28 male, and have been working as a plumber since I was 20. Good money too, pulling in about $75,000 a year in the Midwest, plus side jobs that easily bump that to $90,000 when I hustle. My dad taught me the trade before cancer took him when I was 25. Real salt of the earth type who always said, measure twice, cut once, and never let anyone make you feel small for honest work. 5 years ago, I met Sloan at a community college welding class. Yeah, I know, a plumber taking welding classes sounds like overkill, but I like learning new skills that make me more money. Sloan was 24, brunette, cute in that girl next doorway. Working on some communications degree her parents were funding while she found herself. She seemed different from the usual college crowd, didn't mind that I showed up with grease under my nails, laughed at my jokes about dealing with backed up toilets, and actually seemed impressed that I owned my own truck and tools. My truck at the time was a 2018 F-150, fully loaded with a tool bed I'd custom built myself. It was paid off and earned me a living. Sloan would always comment on how practical and responsible I was compared to other guys her age. We'd grab coffee after class, and she'd complain about her uptight family. Her parents weren't rich, but they sure as heck acted like they were. Dad sold insurance for State Farm, Mom worked part-time as a dental hygienist, but they lived in this cookie-cutter subdivision called Meadowbrook Estates. You know the type. HOA Nazis, perfectly manicured lawns, and neighbors who judge you based on what you drive. They had a BMW 3 Series with payments that probably kept them up at night, shopped at stores they couldn't afford, and posted Instagram pics at Olive Garden like they were dining at some 5-star joint. Everything about them screamed, fake it till you make it, except they'd been faking it so long they forgot they hadn't made it. Sloan seemed different at first. I don't care about their status obsession, she'd say while rolling her eyes. I just want someone real, you know? Someone who works hard and doesn't pretend to be something they're not. That should have been red flag number 1. In my experience, anyone who says they don't care about something usually cares about it more than anything else in the world. The first time Sloan brought me home to meet the family was like walking into a sitcom. Her parents lived in this beige house that looked exactly like every other house on the street, except theirs had a BMW in the driveway and a live laugh love sign by the front door. Her dad, Edward, was this thin guy with a receding hairline who wore polo shirts and khakis, like it was his uniform. The type who probably practiced his handshake in the mirror and called everyone champ or buddy. He answered the door with this fake smile and immediately launched into the Spanish Inquisition. So Martin, plumbing, that's interesting. Is that your long-term plan? Or are you thinking about maybe going back to school? You know, Sloan's communications degree is really opening doors for her. Yeah, it's working out pretty well so far, I said with a shrug. Pays decent. Sloan squeezed my hand and gave me that look. You know the one. The, please just get along with my crazy family look that every guy learns to read eventually. What Edward didn't know was that my decent pay was probably double what he made selling insurance policies to people who couldn't afford them. But I kept that information to myself. Her mom, Carol, was worse. This bleached blonde woman who looked like she'd stepped out of a Real Housewives casting call, but the low-budget version. She spent the entire dinner making these passive-aggressive comments that were technically compliments, but felt like insults. Oh, Martin, you must get so dirty at work. I just couldn't handle that smell of my husband. Then she'd laugh like it was the funniest thing ever, while Edward chuckled along like a seal. It's so nice that Sloan found someone so practical. Edward and I were just saying how we need to get our guest bathroom redone. Maybe you could recommend someone professional? Yeah, I know a guy, I said. What she meant was someone professional, as in not me. Like I was some hack with a plunger instead of a licensed tradesman with 8 years of experience. But the real star of this show? Sloan's younger sister, Brittany. 22 years old, still living at home, working part-time at Sephora at the mall. But this girl acted like she was running a company. She had opinions about everything and the emotional maturity of a wet napkin. Brittany waltzed into dinner, wearing enough makeup to paint a house, carrying her phone like it was a sacred artifact, and immediately started stirring the pot. Sloan, guess who I ran into at Target today? Remember Chase? He asked about you. She said this while staring directly at me, like she was throwing down a challenge. Sloan went red. Brittany, stop it. I'm with Martin now. I'm just saying he looks amazing. Did you know he just got promoted to assistant manager at Morrison Motors? His dad's dealership. That's like really impressive. And he drives that new Camaro now. So cute. This is when I learned about the golden boy. Chase Morrison, 25, known the family since high school. Their families went to the same church. Kids grew up together. Parents were friends. This dude was everything they thought Sloan deserved. Clean job, familiar background, and most importantly, he understood their world. Chase looked like every generic white guy in a stock photo advertising life insurance. Medium height, brown hair, bland face that screamed, I peaked in high school, but I'm still coasting on that confidence. The dinner went on like this for 2 hours. Every conversation somehow circled back to Chase. His job, his car, his family, his potential. Meanwhile, I sat there eating overcooked chicken and listening to them treat me like I was some charity case Sloan had picked up. When we finally left, Sloan apologized. They're just protective. They'll warm up to you, I promise. But driving home, I had this sinking feeling that I'd just gotten my first real look at what I was up against. This wasn't about me not being good enough. This was about them having already picked out Sloane's husband, and I was just some inconvenient detour in their master plan. For the next 3 years, I played the long game because I thought Sloane was worth fighting for. We moved in together to a decent 2-bedroom apartment that I could afford without stretching my budget. She was still in school, so I covered most of the bills without complaint. That's what you do when you love someone, right? Wrong. My best friend Daniel tried to warn me from the beginning. Daniel's this stocky Italian guy who runs his own HVAC business. He's got this way of seeing through people's nonsense that's almost supernatural. He would come over on Friday nights, see Sloane getting dressed up for another family dinner, and just shake his head while grabbing a drink from the fridge. "Bro, you're fighting a war you can't win," he'd say. "They've been planning their next 10 moves since before you even sat down at the board." Daniel had been married once, to a woman whose family treated him the same way. Spent 3 years trying to prove himself before she left him for some accountant. But I kept thinking if I proved myself, worked harder, treated Sloane right, saved money, showed them I was serious about their daughter, they'd eventually come around. Man, I was such an idiot. So, here's what Captain Save-A-Ho did. I started picking up extra weekend jobs, side gigs, anything to build up my savings for a ring. Emergency calls paid double time, burst pipes at 2 a.m., backed up commercial drains on Sundays, water heater installations that couldn't wait until Monday. I was making more money than I ever had, but Sloane wanted to go on expensive dates like her friends, the kind where you drop $200 on tiny portions and fancy cocktails. So I'd bust my rear all week installing water heaters and unclogging commercial drains, then blow half my paycheck trying to keep up with her expectations. Meanwhile, Chase kept showing up at family events like a bad rash. Coincidentally there for every birthday, holiday, random Sunday dinner, church picnic, you name it. Sloane's parents would light up when he walked through the door, like he was their actual son coming home from war. Brittany was his biggest cheerleader, practically bouncing in her seat every time his name came up. Chase is taking night classes now. Business management. That's so smart, thinking about the future. Or, did you see Chase's new apartment? It's in that nice complex by the mall. So sophisticated. The worst part was watching Sloane slowly start parroting their nonsense. It started small, little comments here and there. "Martin, maybe you should think about going back to school. It might open up opportunities. My dad thinks you should consider a more professional career path, something with growth potential." Chase was telling us about his 5-year plan. "Do you have any long-term goals beyond plumbing?" Each comment felt like a tiny knife, but I swallowed my pride because I really loved her. I even looked into night school programs, thinking maybe if I got some business degree, they'd finally see me as worthy of their precious daughter. Daniel watched this happening and started inviting me out more. Anything to get me away from that toxic environment and remind me who I was. He never said, "I told you so," or tried to play therapist. Daniel's not that type. Instead, he'd just be there, solid and reliable, letting me vent while we worked on his boat or helped each other with job sites. The breaking point started when Sloane began spending more time at her parents' house, coming home with this weird attitude, like she was building up courage for something. She'd look at me differently, not with love or even annoyance, but with this calculating expression I'd never seen before. I should have known then that the fix was in, but I was too busy trying to be good enough for people who had already decided I never would be. The end came on a Thursday in July. I remember because I'd just finished a brutal job. Some genius at an apartment complex had tried to flush a diaper down the toilet and backed up the entire building system. It took me 6 hours crawling through a basement that smelled like death, but I walked away with $800 for one day's work. I came home expecting maybe a drink, a shower, and some time with my girlfriend. Instead, I found Sloane and Brittany sitting on my couch like they owned the place. Sloane was wearing this outfit I'd never seen. Brittany was practically vibrating with excitement, scrolling through her phone but clearly waiting for the show to start. Sloane had been packing. I could see boxes in the hallway that hadn't been there that morning. "Martin, we need to talk," Sloane said, without even looking up. I set down my tool bag. Something in her voice, the way she was sitting with her arms crossed, how Brittany kept smirking at her phone. "I've been doing a lot of thinking about us, about my family, about what I want for my future." She paused, like she was delivering a speech she'd practiced in the mirror. "They're never going to accept you, Martin. And honestly, I can't keep fighting them anymore. It's exhausting." I waited, feeling that familiar rage building but keeping it locked down. Chase and I have been talking more lately. He gets it. The pressure, the expectations, what it's like to be part of our community. It's just easier. Right. Brittany couldn't contain herself anymore. "Sloane deserves someone who fits in, Martin. Chase is already talking to Dad about taking over the dealership when his father retires. That's real security. That's a future." I looked at Sloane. She nodded along like Brittany was making perfect sense. "I deserve to be happy without all this conflict," Sloane continued. "My parents are right. Dating outside our circle just complicates everything. You're a good guy, Martin, but let's be realistic here. You'll never fit in at family dinners or nice vacations. It's awkward for everyone. 4 years together, 2 years living together. And she was talking about me like I was some failed experiment that hadn't worked out. "I mean, look at you right now," Brittany added with this cruel laugh. "You smell terrible and you're getting our couch dirty. Chase would never come home looking like that." That's when I noticed Chase's Camaro in the parking lot. He'd been waiting outside, probably texting Brittany play-by-play updates. "You're absolutely right," I said quietly. Sloane's mouth dropped open. "Excuse me? Get your stuff and leave. Both of you." "Martin, you don't understand." "Nah, I get it. You want easy? Go get him. Just not from my place." Brittany jumped up. "You can't just throw her out. This is her home too. Actually, Brittany, this is my apartment. Sloane's name isn't on anything because she's been playing house instead of paying bills. Sloane went pale. I think this was the first time it hit her that she'd been living in my world, not ours. Seriously? You're not even going to fight for us? Is it that easy for you to just throw me away? Fight for what? You just told me I'm an embarrassment. But I thought, we've been together for 4 years. And, Brittany interrupted, Chase would fight for Sloane. He'd prove himself, do whatever it takes. You're just giving up. Brittany, you live in your parents' basement and sell lipstick at the mall. Maybe sit this one out. Her face went red. You jerk. Sloane, pack your things. 30 minutes, then I want you both out. Where am I supposed to go? Ask Chase. Problem solved. The guy was standing in my living room when I came back from the bedroom, like he owned the place. Same smug expression, same backwards baseball cap, same attitude that made you want to knock his teeth out. Hey Martin, no hard feelings, right? Sloane and I just have more in common. Sure thing, champ. As they were loading boxes into Chase's car, Sloane turned back one last time. This is for the best, Martin. You'll find someone more compatible. Compatible. Like I was a software update that didn't work with their operating system. I watched them drive away, then called Daniel. It's over. They're gone. Yes, sir. I'll be there in 20 with food and drinks. That's brotherhood right there. The next few weeks were darker than I want to admit. Getting dumped because you're not good enough for someone's fake family? That cuts deeper than you'd think. But I didn't wallow. Couldn't afford to. I threw myself into work because it was the only thing that made sense anymore. Physical labor, tangible problems, solutions that actually worked when you did them right. Daniel showed up the day after Sloane left with a case of drinks and a job offer. He didn't ask questions, didn't want to talk about feelings, didn't try to tell me everything happens for a reason. He just handed me a drink and got straight to business. My cousin Rico's got a commercial contract, 30-unit apartment complex, complete plumbing overhaul. Needs to be done in 6 weeks. You in? Yeah, I'm in. Good. We start Monday. And Martin? Forget that girl. You're better off. That was it. The job was brutal. 18-hour days, crawling through basements and ceiling spaces, replacing pipes that hadn't been updated since the Carter administration. But it kept my hands busy and my mind off Sloane's betrayal. And the money was incredible. Almost 15 grand for 6 weeks of work. I moved to a smaller apartment across town. No more worrying about matching furniture or keeping things clean enough for surprise visits from the parents-in-law from heck. I bought a leather couch that was actually comfortable instead of stylish, a 60-inch TV for watching football, and a recliner that was specifically designed for guys who work with their hands. The money from Rico's job was good, really good. Enough to start thinking about buying my own place, instead of throwing rent money into someone else's pocket every month. Daniel and I started hanging out more regularly. Friday night pool at Murphy's, weekend poker games with his crew from the HVAC world, occasional fishing trips when we could both get away from work. These guys didn't give a darn about what your girlfriend's parents thought of you. They cared about whether you could do the job, whether you paid your debts, and whether you could hang when things got tough. Murphy's became my second home. Big Mike would have a drink waiting for me before I even asked, and the regular crowd started treating me like family. It was refreshing as heck. No pretense, no judgment, just guys being guys and supporting each other. About 6 months after the breakup, I started dating again. Nothing serious, just casual stuff with women who appreciated a guy with a steady job in his own place. But the real game changer was Ashley. I met her at a hardware store on a Saturday morning. She was trying to figure out how to fix a leaky faucet in her apartment, and I offered to help. She was down to earth, pretty in a natural way that didn't require 3 layers of makeup. Ashley's parents were normal people. Her dad was a retired electrician who respected what I did for a living. Her mom was a school secretary who invited me to family dinners without making me feel like I was being interviewed for a job. Dating her was like remembering what it felt like to be valued for who you actually are instead of who someone thinks you should become. A year after the breakup, I was a completely different person. Leaner from all the physical work, bank account healthier than it had been in years, social life that didn't revolve around impressing people who would never be impressed. That's when the karma started rolling in, and it was more beautiful than I could have imagined. About 18 months after Sloane walked out of my life, Daniel showed up at my new place with information and the biggest grin I'd ever seen. I bought a small house by then. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, garage big enough for all my tools and Daniel's boat when he needed storage. Bro, you need to hear this. He cracked open a drink and settled into my new couch like he was getting ready to tell the story of the century. Remember Chase the Golden Boy? I was rebuilding my kitchen sink and barely looked up. What about him? Rico's buddy works at Morrison Motors. Says Chase is a complete disaster. Now he had my attention. Apparently, once Chase won Sloane, the mask came off real quick. Kid's lazy as heck, entitled beyond belief, figured he'd coast on his family connections for the rest of his life. Daniel pulled out his phone and showed me some social media screenshots. Pictures of Chase and Sloane at restaurants, vacation spots, looking like the perfect couple Sloane had always wanted to be part of. But if you looked close, you could see the strain in Sloane's eyes, the forced smile that didn't reach her face. But here's the beautiful part, Daniel continued. Chase's promotion at Daddy's dealership lasted exactly 6 months before they quietly moved him to washing cars in the back lot. The kid couldn't handle basic customer service, kept making potential buyers angry, and got caught sleeping in the office during his lunch breaks. I had to stop working and pay full attention, because this was getting good. It gets better. This guy started treating Sloane like his personal servant the second she moved in with him. Cooking, cleaning, doing his laundry, handling all the adult responsibilities while he plays Xbox and hangs out with his buddies. The irony wasn't lost on me. Chase has been asking Edward for money constantly. Can't make his car payments. Turns out that Camaro was leased and he couldn't afford it. wants Edward to co-sign loans, pay for his night school classes, cover his credit card bills. The same family that thought you weren't good enough financially is now dealing with their golden boy treating them like a personal ATM. The poetic justice was beautiful. They'd traded a guy who worked his rear off and paid his own bills for a lazy mama's boy who treated Sloane like a maid and them like a bank. But wait, there's more, Daniel said, clearly enjoying himself. Carol's been complaining to anyone who'll listen at church about how disrespectful Chase is at family dinners. Shows up late, doesn't help with dishes, talks back to Edward when he tries to give him advice. I had to laugh. The same parents who'd spent 4 years making me feel like my job wasn't good enough were now dealing with their precious boy insulting their own careers. Wait for the real bomb. Brittany? Hey boy. She's been flirting with Chase since day one. You can't be serious. Dead serious. Sloane caught them texting, and there was this huge fight at a family barbecue. Everyone knows she's trying to steal her sister's boyfriend. That was the cherry on top. The same sister who'd helped convince Sloane to dump me was now trying to poach the guy Sloane had dumped me for. Wait, how the hell do you know all this? I asked. Rico's girlfriend works with Carol at the dentist office. Says Carol comes in every day complaining about Chase, asking if she knows any nice young men who might be interested in Sloane. Apparently, she keeps mentioning how much they miss having you around. I almost choked on my drink. What the heck? Scout's honor. Carol told Rico's girlfriend that you were such a nice boy, and they should never have let Sloane make such a mistake. Like it was Sloane's decision instead of them manipulating her into it. The best part was that while their family was imploding, my life was getting better every day. I'd gotten 2 more big contracts, bought a newer truck with cash, and was planning to propose to Ashley with a ring that would make Sloane's look like it came from a gumball machine. So what are you going to do if they reach out? Daniel asked. Nothing. That's not my circus anymore. But deep down, I was curious to see how much worse it could get for them. I didn't have to wait long to find out. 2 months later, the messages started coming in like a flood. First from numbers I didn't recognize, then through social media accounts I'd forgotten existed, then through mutual friends who suddenly wanted to catch up after months of silence. Martin, it's Sloane. I made a huge mistake. Can we talk? Delete. I miss what we had. Chase is not who I thought he was. Delete. My parents were wrong about everything. They see that now. Can we just... Delete. But she wasn't giving up. The messages got longer, more desperate, more manipulative. Martin, I know you're getting these. Chase has been cheating on me. I caught him with 3 different girls. One of them was my sister. My own sister. Can you believe that? I am heartbroken. Everything's falling apart. My parents are fighting because of the stress. I need someone stable in my life. I need you. Please call me. That stopped me cold. This was better than any soap opera I'd ever seen. I showed the message to Ashley, who was making dinner in my kitchen. Holy cow, your ex is completely nuts. Ashley found the whole situation hilarious instead of threatening, which was one of the many reasons I was falling hard for her. The mutual friends started calling next. Ellie, who I hadn't heard from since the breakup, suddenly needed to catch up over coffee. Sloane's really sorry, Martin. She realizes what she lost. Chase has been treating her like garbage, cheating constantly, spending her money. Her parents are devastated. Can't you find it in your heart to forgive her? Nope. But she was young and stupid. Her family pressured her. You guys were so good together. Nope. Come on. Don't you miss what you had? What we had was her family treating me like dirt for 4 years, while I paid all her bills. So no. Then came Edward himself. The same man who'd spent 4 years making me feel like I wasn't good enough for his precious daughter was now calling my work phone trying to get me to come back. Martin, son, we made a terrible mistake. Chase has been awful to Sloane. We should never have interfered in your relationship. Can you come to dinner this Sunday? We miss having you around. No thanks. But Martin, you were like a son to us. I hung up. Carol was next, calling while I was having dinner with Ashley's family. People who'd accepted me immediately, because their daughter was happy. Martin, dear, please don't hang up. We were so wrong about everything. Chase has been a disaster. He quit his job. He's living off Sloane's credit cards. He's been cheating with multiple women, including our own daughter, Brittany. Our family is falling apart. Sloane needs someone stable. Someone like you. I'm with someone else now. What? But what about all the history you two have? All those years together? You can't just throw that away for some random girl. Like I was supposed to sit there waiting for your princess to come back. Excuse me? Nothing. Bye, Carol. I hung up, but Sloane wasn't done. When the calls and messages didn't work, she escalated to showing up places. My job sites, my house, the bar where Daniel and I played pool. Each time more desperate, more manipulative, more entitled. The breaking point came when she showed up at Ashley's hospital during her shift, trying to cause a scene in front of her coworkers. Security had to escort her out while she screamed about how I was making the biggest mistake of my life and would regret choosing some random girl over her. That night, Ashley came home shaken, but more angry than scared. Martin, your ex is seriously unstable. She cornered me and went off about how I stole you from her and how I'll never understand you like she does. Then she started crying and begging me to convince you to take her back. That was it. The next morning, I went to the courthouse and filed for a restraining order. 200 feet minimum distance, no contact, no third-party messages. Violation meant arrest. For 2 months after the restraining order was served, it was blissfully quiet. I thought maybe Sloane had finally gotten the message and moved on with her life. I should have known better. The grand finale happened in October. I was sleeping in at my house when Daniel started calling my phone at 6 a.m. Bro, you need to get up, crazy X alert, easy. She's sitting in her car outside your place. I stumbled to the window and looked out. Sloane's beat-up car was parked directly across from my front door. The car looked terrible. Dented bumper, mismatched tires, One of those temporary spare tires that you're supposed to replace immediately. When she saw me in the window, she got out of the car and started walking toward my house. She looked rough, skinny, pale, wearing sweatpants and a hoodie like she'd given up on trying to impress anyone. "Martin!" she yelled from the street. "I know you can hear me. Just give me 5 minutes. Please!" I called 911 while she continued her meltdown in front of my neighbors' houses. Ashley was staying the night, and she woke up to the sound of Sloan screaming like a banshee at 6 a.m. on a Saturday. "Chase left me for Brittany, my own sister. They're engaged now. My parents are getting divorced because of all the stress and fighting. Everything I thought I wanted turned into a nightmare. You can't turn your back on me." She was walking in circles on my front lawn, gesturing wildly with her hands like she was having a full mental breakdown. The neighbors were starting to come outside. The old lady from next door was recording everything on her phone. My mom lost her job because she kept missing work to deal with family drama. My dad's talking about selling the house because Chase spent so much of their money. I lost everything chasing what they wanted for me. The irony was beautiful. You're the only stable thing I ever had. You're the only man who ever really loved me. I was so stupid to listen to them. Please, Martin. I'll do anything to make this right. This was the same woman who'd sat on my couch 2 years earlier and told me I'd never fit into her world. That dating me was too much work. That Chase was just easier. I don't care about any of that superficial nonsense anymore. I just want someone who works hard and treats me right. Someone real. The police showed up just as Sloan was getting to the really good parts of her sob story. 2 officers got out of their patrol car and immediately assessed the situation. A crazy woman screaming on someone's lawn at 6 a.m. Restraining order violation in progress. "Ma'am, we need you to step back from the property," the first officer said calmly. Sloan spun around like she hadn't even noticed them arrive. "Officer, this is all a misunderstanding. That's my ex-fiancé in there. We used to be engaged. I just need to talk to him." "Ma'am, do you understand that there's a restraining order in place? You're not supposed to be within 200 feet of this property." Her face went white. "What? No, that's just a piece of paper. Our connection is way stronger than that. Martin, tell them it's okay. Tell them you want to talk to me." I opened my front door but stayed on the porch. "Officers, I want the restraining order enforced." "Martin, no. Please don't do this to me. I have nowhere else to go." The second officer was pulling out his handcuffs. "Ma'am, you're under arrest for violating a restraining order. You have the right to remain silent." Sloan completely lost her mind. "This is insane. Martin, we were together for 4 years. You can't just throw that away." "I made one mistake." "Well, you made a choice," I called from my porch. "Deal with it." They put her in the back of the patrol car while she continued screaming. Ashley came out onto the porch in her robe and watched the whole show with this expression of pure disbelief. "Good grief, Martin. How did you deal with that level of crazy for 4 years?" "I didn't know it was crazy at the time." As the police car drove away with Sloan in the back, Daniel showed up with coffee and donuts, grinning like it was Christmas morning. "Dowd, I've been sitting in my truck around the corner for 20 minutes watching this show. I recorded the whole thing. Best entertainment I've had all year." Over donuts and coffee on my front porch, Daniel filled me in on the rest of the story. Apparently, while Sloan had been obsessing over getting me back, Chase had been destroying everything she thought she wanted. He'd quit his job at the dealership after his dad got tired of his attitude and laziness. Started living off Sloan's credit cards and what little savings she had left. When that ran out, he moved on to manipulating her parents for money, creating massive fights between Edward and Carol about their finances. The final straw came when Brittany decided she wanted Chase for herself. She convinced Chase that Sloan was too damaged from her relationship with me, and that he deserved someone fresh and uncomplicated. Chase dumped Sloan for her own sister, and Brittany moved in with him immediately. Edward and Carol started blaming each other for the whole mess, leading to separation and eventual divorce proceedings. Sloan found herself completely alone. No boyfriend, no family support, no money, and no one to blame but herself. 3 days later, I got a call from my lawyer. Sloan had been charged with criminal harassment and violation of a restraining order. Her parents were trying to negotiate a plea deal to keep her out of jail, but the prosecutor was pushing for actual consequences. "She's looking at up to 6 months if convicted," my lawyer told me. "Her attorney wants to know if you'd be willing to testify about the pattern of harassment leading up to the restraining order." Absolutely. 2 weeks after that, Daniel brought me more updates. Sloan had moved out of state to live with some distant relatives in Arizona, trying to escape the mess she'd created. Chase and Brittany had broken up after a month when he cheated on her with someone else. Edward and Carol's divorce was finalized, and they'd both lost significant money in legal fees. The house in Meadowbrook Estates was up for sale. Turns out they couldn't afford the mortgage without both incomes. Meanwhile, my life kept getting better every day. Ashley and I got engaged 6 months later with a ring that was twice the size of the one I'd bought Sloan, paid for with money I'd earned. Ashley's parents treated me like family from day one. Her dad and I spent weekends working on projects around their house, talking about everything from sports to business to life. Her mom invited me to every family gathering and actually listened when I talked about my work, instead of making me feel like I should be embarrassed about it. This is what it feels like to be valued for who you actually are. The final piece of poetic justice came a year later, when I ran into Edward at a hardware store. He looked older, thinner, beaten down by the consequences of his own poor judgment. When he saw me, he actually tried to duck down a different aisle to avoid me, but I wasn't going to let him off that easy. "Hey, Edward," I called out, walking over. "How's things?" He couldn't meet my eyes. "Oh, hi, Martin. Things are different. Complicated." "Yeah, heard about the divorce. That's rough. We made some mistakes. About you, about Chase, about what was important." "Yup." He finally looked up. "For what it's worth, Carol and I both realize now that you were good to Sloan. Little late for that, he nodded, looking defeated. I know, I wanted you to know that we were wrong. About everything. Yeah, you were. I grabbed my cart and headed toward the checkout. See you around, Edward. Then I walked away. Sloane's still in Arizona, last I heard. Still single, still dealing with the consequences of chasing fool's gold instead of appreciating what was real. Chase has moved on to his next victim. Some 19-year-old he met at a bar who doesn't know any better yet. Brittany's back living with her mom in Carol's new apartment, working the same dead-end job. Me? I'm married to Ashley now, running my own business, living in a house I bought with my own money, surrounded by people who actually give a darn about me.